They say memory is the thread that holds our lives together. But what happens when that thread begins to unravel and reveals a secret you were never meant to see? In the quiet, fog-draped town of Maple Hollow, Vermont, the year was 2007. It was a sleepy community, a place where the loudest sound was the church bell on Sunday, and mysteries were things you only read about in books. For nearly a decade, peace had settled over the town like a comfortable blanket. That is, until a young woman walked into the police station, her hands shaking and her eyes wide with a terror that no one could understand. Her name was Clara Bennett, 24 years old, a librarian assistant, soft-spoken, ordinary, until the day she stood before the front desk, trembling, pale, and clutching a worn notebook, and said the words that would shatter the town's tranquility forever. "I remember a man dying." The officers stared at her, their expressions a mixture of confusion and pity. There hadn't been a murder in Maple Hollow for years. They thought she was lost in a fantasy, perhaps a bad dream she couldn't shake. But what Clara described wasn't imagination. It was a memory, visceral and chillingly specific. She spoke of the blinding glare of headlights on a deserted road, the damp, heavy smell of wet dirt, the rhythmic thud of a shovel, and a voice in the dark whispering a desperate plea. Under the elm. "Don't let him find me." At first, they dismissed her. They thought she was delusional, another troubled soul seeking attention. Then, she mentioned a name, David Hale, the same man who had vanished without a trace 9 years earlier. And suddenly, everyone stopped laughing. Detective Mark Ellison, a man who had long grown accustomed to the town's quiet rhythm, reluctantly pulled the dusty file from the archives. The case had gone cold almost as soon as it began. No body, no credible leads, no closure for the grieving family. The last time anyone saw David Hale, he was on a dirt road near the woods, his car found abandoned the next morning. But when officers, guided by nothing more than the fragmented nightmares of a young woman, drove out to the location Clara described, their shovels struck something hard. It wasn't a rock. It was bone. Buried beneath the gnarled roots of an old, sprawling elm tree was the body of David Hale. His watch, its face cracked, was still strapped to his wrist, its hands frozen in time. His glasses, shattered and mud-caked, lay beside him, just as Clara said they would be. Every single, impossible detail she remembered was real, but she had been just a teenager when David Hale disappeared. She'd never even met him. So how did she know? The question echoed through the sterile halls of the police station. Detective Ellison, now obsessed, began digging deeper, not just into the cold case, but into Clara's past. He discovered a thread, thin but undeniable, connecting her to that fateful night. Clara had lived in a small house nearby when David disappeared, and that summer, her own father, Edward Bennett, had been employed by the wealthy Hale family, doing odd jobs on their estate. A background check revealed a darker side to Edward, a history of violent outbursts, and, most damningly, no alibi for the night David Hale vanished. The connection was no longer a coincidence, it was a lead. As the investigation intensified, Clara's nightmares grew worse. The fragments became scenes, the whispers became screams. Desperate for answers, she agreed to undergo hypnosis. Under the gentle guidance of a therapist, the walls in her mind began to crumble. She recalled the night not as a dream, but as a witness. She saw her father, his face contorted with rage, arguing with David Hale by the side of the road. She saw the fight, the shove, the sickening crack as David's head hit a rock. And then, the most horrific memory of all surfaced. She remembered helping her father bury the body. She was just a child, terrified and manipulated, forced into silence by a man who was supposed to protect her. For 9 years, her mind had locked the memory away, a desperate act of survival. With this new, horrifying testimony, investigators secured a warrant to search Edward Bennett's property. Tucked away in the back of his dilapidated shed, hidden inside a rusty toolbox, they found it, David Hale's wallet. Forensic analysis confirmed the presence of DNA, not just David's, but Edward's and Clara's. Confronted with the irrefutable evidence, the wallet, the body, his own daughter's recovered memory, Edward confessed. He claimed it was an accident, a fight that spiraled out of control. But the jury saw it for what it was, murder. Edward Bennett was sentenced to life in prison. Clara, broken but resolute, testified against him. her voice finally freeing her from the guilt that had festered in her subconscious for years. She had brought justice to David Hale and peace to his family, but her own peace remained elusive. The nightmares never stopped. In her dreams, she still stands under the branches of the old elm tree, the smell of damp earth filling the air. Her story left Maple Hollow with a permanent scar and a lingering, unanswered question. Was it truly a case of recovered memory, a psychological phenomenon unlocked by trauma? Or was it something else, something supernatural, guiding her toward the truth? Did her own mind remember? Or did something, perhaps the restless spirit of David Hale himself, make her remember? Clara Bennett eventually left Maple Hollow, hoping to outrun the echoes of her past. But she remains haunted, a woman defined by a memory that wasn't supposed to be hers. Her story is a chilling reminder that while the truth may fade, buried under years of silence and soil, it never truly disappears.